Welcome to the Healist Podcast, where we inspire and guide healers through business expansion. We give voice to incredibly abundant healers to share their stories. We dive into the quantum field to unlock the energies of conscious creation. We also develop digital tools to help you grow, which you can find on healist.com. I'm your host, Yuli, and I'm grateful you chose to join this space. Now let's go deep. Hello, my dear friends. Excited to welcome you back to another episode of the Healist Podcast. And I'm really thrilled today to introduce Karuna. She's a radiant force of compassion and transformation in the holistic healing world. She's a celebrated Kundalini Yoga teacher, healer, and global retreat leader. She's also the author of an upcoming book and Kundalini Yoga manual, and the developer of the spiritual maintenance practice, which beautifully engages in human kindness and compassion. We're going to dive into her inspiring journey and the incredible work she's doing to uplift and empower others. And I got to tell you, just from our few minutes chatting before this recording, she's been already uplifting me in so many ways. So, Karuna, please welcome to the podcast.
Oh, I'm so happy to know you. I love listening to you, and I love hearing what you say and how cozy you make us all feel. So thank you for engaging in this book of mine that's just been published, #1 on Amazon for yoga right now, Light on Kundalini. It's your lifestyle guide to yoga and awakening. You are so welcome to ask me and engage your viewers, your listeners, to those aspects of what gets us through every block. How do we like dive into, wow, that really, bothered me. What do I do right now just to like squeeze this feeling without pushing it away, with sitting with it, with recognizing it, and understanding that it's a part of me. It's a conversation within me already, what's come up for us. So let us dive in. I'm super psyched to be here.
Amazing. Well, I'm really grateful for you bringing this up. And also just to mention to our listeners who might be listening later on, or who knows, maybe years from now, we're actually recording it on the inauguration week, like a day after MLK Day, right? I feel like we're in such a state of light and darkness right now for so many people. And it just came up in our conversation before. And I think I couldn't imagine a better guest to kind of guide us and show us the light, maybe, and maybe focus on the light while not ignoring the darkness. We don't want to be ignorant people. We welcome all worlds, but it seems to me that you have so much wisdom, and I think it was meant to be scheduled today so we can share some of this wisdom with the world.
It is. It's so blessed to have these challenges come up for us, because how else are we going to siphon through to purity, to the sattvic guna? Are we going to, this whole idea about sitting with, what is in yogic practice, in lifestyle. I take this yogic practice super seriously, I suppose, but I don't even notice when I'm doing yoga or not doing yoga anymore. I'm basically right here with all of us in the same way. I just want to be supernatural in my approach and organic. And how can I become, that more purely and satisfy my words to get to you, to get to the true you. And, I know we can sit and retreat, and we do every December in Costa Rica, and, we go all the way to the blue zone, and we trust that. But the sweet potatoes are in the oven right now, and they're also a part of the blue zone, the purple sweet potato that, gives us longevity. So what do we want to do? Do we want to sit in judgment and dwell in that darkness? Or do we want to somehow find a relationship, a partnership, if you like, with divine, fierce, divine feminine comes through right now? It's like, okay, she's bringing everything up for us to look at and clear. And so this is when I know that sadhana works. Sadhana in yogic practice, everyone will tell you that there's a 4:45 a.m. sadhana practice wherever Karuna is teaching. Wherever I am, you can come to my yogic sadhana practice, whether you're taking my retreat or not, or we're just because I invite you to sit with your soul, to line up those demons every morning before the sun rises, to use the technology and the grace of light. Inevitably, we're seeing the pinnacle of the Piscean age, which is the dark age, the Kali Yuga. And we're moving to the Aquarian age. We're in the Aquarian age. It actually was activated right on the day of the pandemic, the March 20th, 2020, right? 2020, was it?
Yes.
I can't remember anymore. 12 years ago. Wow. And that told us we had some cleaning up to do. And so, in my book, I mention my own experiences that have taken me to my knees. We're watching the fires burning in LA. I lived in LA. My soul now, after living in the Colorado Rockies for the last 30 years, literally, has become super sensitive to the darkness. And yet we're going to turn it around so the phoenix is rising in LA, right? We're going to get rid of all that materialism, right? No, it's hard. It's hard not to see your friends in their homes again. And what everyone is facing, like COVID changed us, this is going to change us. And so it's auspicious to be here with you today. Divine timing.
Amazing. And, when we talked about what are the overarching theme that we would like to make it about today, you just said right out, you said it's heal the healer. And I said, This is what we do. I couldn't say it more perfectly. So we're here to heal the healers. And I think you describe it so beautifully, some of your emotions around it. And I totally agree with you with some of the yogic tools. And I feel like the healers sometimes don't use their own tools. I don't know if you've seen that, because we have a lot of tools.
Oh, yeah. Honestly, the tool here and is getting up. That's the tool you need, is to, the what do you call it? The forklift, become the forklift. So like get yourself out from horizontal to vertical to the altar and release that, that tendency to live in those subconscious patterns. So yes, we have to heal the healer, because the healer sometimes is so busy healing others that he forgets about herself or himself to take, those incredible therapeutic moments to walk, to breathe, to bathe, to do the Ishnan, to do to sit at the altar and pray. It says it's not, it's no specific religion. All of them are welcome. And that's why I love Kundalini Yoga, because it takes us back to the 10 gurus that were back in the 15th century up until, the 17th century or whatever. However, but there's no living gurus anymore. And Guru Gobind Singh was the 10th guru, and each one of these gurus represents the 10 bodies. And so the 10 bodies in Kundalini Yoga is the soul body at the base, first guru, Guru Nanak, negative mind, positive mind, neutral at the heart, fifth body, physical body. And I know you've done this yogic practice. So sixth body is that beautiful, those arc lines. Ladies, we have an arc line across our chest. Never, ever defeat always rise, always let it come up, right, from the base. And so when we're in these upper chakras, in this upper triangle, we activate that willingness to surrender. And yes, in Kundalini Yoga, as you know and experience, we hold our arms up for a while. And, sometimes you get a broken arm in your life, and sometimes you can't hold your arms up. And there's, this idea of, okay, now what do I do with my practice? How do I heal the healer that's been wounded? And yet, if we reverse the vocabulary, turn the situation around to know that we asked for it in the first place, to switch it up, to bring in some new ideas, new, not necessarily concepts, but just medicine, as meditation is medicine. If we can digest that in itself by juicing or, again, mindful walking, using other masters, it's one I love, that relationship with the Plum Village, his community, our community, what we're gathering here today, inviting new community in. Why would we ever turn and look at what the gossip? I've never been asked about the gossipy part of Kundalini Yoga ever, because I guess the students just know that I'm sort of like ancient wisdom. Not sort of like, that's the shy in me, but to really own that ancient wisdom, to polish those antiques inside of us, those wisdom keepers, and just to really believe that Kundalini Yoga is 5,000 years old. And those gurus, those 10 gurus, all sacrificed so much. As Buddha reminds us, suffering leads to compassion. And when I received my name, Karuna, I literally had to take my own canoe across the Ganga, because I missed the group, which is not surprising, to travel with them in Varanasi on Mahashivaratri in March 2004, and receive my name, which I didn't know how it was spelled even, and really, like, what does it mean? And that then there told me I needed to learn and study and become compassion. And when I took that vow to become Karuna, believe me, it was easier being all the other names I had before it. Because when you surrender to a yogic practice, you watch the gossip and you make sure you don't get involved with that. It is unknowing. It is good knowledge, wisdom. Grace is very generous. She'll teach us how to deal with gossip and how to use the practice of angles and triangles, Kundalini Yoga, to release. But we do have to have a conversation about it, because it does bother our sensitive souls, like the destruction, of any burning fire. It's the Agni, it's the fire, it's the second chakra, it's the negative mind, and we feed it. And we feed it so much, and we compete as women to get the hierarchy of a yogic practice. No, we blend. Let's blend, Yuli. You and I, we blend.
Well, it's because our egos have been in check over many, many years of practice, right? Yeah. And I think this is where I find personally, the more I operate, and, I walk between the worlds, the business world and the healing world a lot. And it's constant, the reminder, right? And I find that the ego is the major source of darkness that we're seeing in all kinds of worlds, business world, politics, the world, you name it, right? And I think what I made my personal practice, and I also try not to attach too much to certain traditions, leaders, gurus, styles, it's all about creating that balance, that coherence, and working on, you know, putting your ego in check and not being led by it, right? It's leading from the heart. That's been like the hardest practice for me. And it doesn't matter if I do, I go to a Reiki practitioner or I do my own yoga or meditation. It's all about, connecting with my heart and also keeping that ego in check. So you said it very beautifully as well. And I had so many like follow up as you were talking. There were so many things popping in my mind because you were literally talking about like events in my life, things that happened. I was like, oh, I know exactly what she's talking about. And let's just kind of dial back. It's kind of, first of all, the fact that we both discovered Kundalini Yoga, I did in 2005 on a trip to India. It wasn't Varanasi, it was Rishikesh. But
of course.
I went to India. I went to India as a frustrated New York City yogi who just went to every single studio. And I just could feel with my own, I don't know, born intuition that it wasn't real. Like what I was taught was a packaged, like a processed food versus like, give me the wholesome version, right? Give me the real thing. So I book a 30-year-old does. I book a ticket to India, pack a little, backpack, well, a large backpack actually, and just go to find the real yoga in India. It took a couple of stops, but eventually I ended up I wanted to end up in Rishikesh because I had a feeling that's where I really find. And I go to a couple of other ashrams to try different styles and don't really connect. And then I stumble upon a Kundalini yoga school. And it was like from the moment I had that class, like everything changed. It was the first time in my life that I could feel, my chakras and really understand like all my energy centers. And really feel the energy moving in my body, which I never had experienced before. I can't say I had the full Kundalini awakening. That would be an amazing story, right? My first class. Some people do, but that's
really. I don't think
the stories you hear, right? The story goes. But it was amazing to be able to feel that energy, and I was hooked. And when I came back to the city, I found a Kundalini yoga school, and then I started practicing, every week. And, it's really built who I am. It built a lot of my perceptions about what, prosperity means, for example, and how spirituality and abundance work together, which was confusing me for a while. And it really cleared and created this beautiful ground. And then another thing that you mentioned is about the arms up, how in Kundalini Yoga we practice a lot with our arms up and how difficult it is. It was so funny because the last big Kundalini Yoga group event that I've done was actually right before the pandemic. It was the very last white tantric yoga workshop that was done in New York City right before the pandemic in 2019.
Cool.
Right? And it was like 1,000.
That's all you needed. Yeah. Oh my
1,000 people, and you're sitting, and of course, I booked the ticket way in advance. I'm so excited to finally do my first one, and I get a frozen shoulder like a couple of weeks before. And I'm thinking, how am I going to be doing? And for those of you who are listening, we're talking about like 10 hours a day, basically sitting in this intense.
The most intense. You can't get any more intense than that.
It's definitely the most intense thing I've ever done. And I haven't run a marathon, but I feel like this is harder. So I get there with my frozen shoulder and, I'm just going to trust the divine that, I know I'm supposed to be there. I don't know how. And literally I sit down. And I came without a partner. And this is something you do in a partnership, of course. And so they just find somebody else who came alone, right?
Right.
And they put in front of me, and my teacher saw me alone, and he points to this woman and says, "Come sit there." And she turns to be the most amazing, body alignment, Chinese medicine, whatever you want to name it, healer. And she looks at me, we start doing the first exercise, and she feels my pain because at that point, I was just after a first hour, I
Oh,
was ready
yeah.
to scream with my
Oh, yeah.
shoulder. And she's like, "Oh, what's up with your your right shoulder? Let me take a look at it." And at that point, I was like, "Whoever wants to take a look, please do
Yeah.
something."
Be my
And
guest.
she literally takes it and she turns it a couple of times. She does a little massaging, a little movement. And I gotta tell you, within the next hour, I felt no pain.
Oh,
And we
my God.
finished the 10-hour, White
Oh,
Tantric Yoga
yeah.
workshop. And it was the most amazing, like elevating thing I've ever done. I just felt so cleansed, so cleared. And this was just divine there for me, healing the healer. So it just came to me when you said that. I was like, okay, I have to tell this story because
Oh, my
that was
God.
actually got me into realizing the power of holistic healing. Because
Yeah.
up until then, I've seen it, I tried it, I believed in it,
Yeah.
but this was the most miraculous thing that happened to me. And I
Wow.
started working. We're still friends with that woman, and I started, being closer with her and
Yeah.
trying to see how can I help you, right? You just literally healed me with your two hands. How can I help you? And some of the early ideas of Healist really sprung from that.
Bowl. I mean, just digest that, everyone. Like, I have to digest this because this conversation is so important for us right here and now to trust I'm going with my pain. I've been warned. I know it's going to be the hardest, longest day of my life, but I'm going with it. And I'm not bringing anyone there with me, just going empty. And I'm arriving, and somebody points to somebody, and they sit in front of me. And I open my eyes and I look in their eyes, and we're across from each other, knee to knee. That's how close we are. And this compassionate healer sits across and heals me. And I end up healing with 10 hours of Kundalini Yoga White Tantric practice, which is designed to, for the next 40 days after that tantric practice, to heal all the rest of you. In 40 days, it continues to work on you, and it changes your habitual patterns that bring us to that, panic place, that anxiety, the stressors. And then for some reason, I show up as I am with my pain, and I receive this miracle. And that is what I talk about in my book. It is the light on Kundalini. It isn't the darkness. It isn't the idea that one will be awakened overnight with a yogic, awakening that changes their life. Many women, young women, have come and sat with me, either in one-on-one, mostly class situations, retreat situations. My parents don't know what to do with me because I've had an awakening. And I see these women now, 20, 15, 10 years later, and they're in relationships, they're mothers, they're living a healthy, happy, holy life. It works, Kundalini Yoga, like that. It is a mastery, and it does. I could give you so many facts about it that in 6 months you understand it, and versus 22 years of practicing Hatha Yoga, it doesn't. It challenges your brain and your mind, your right left hemisphere. It balances your glandular system on its own. When she adjusted you, she was guided by Guru Ram Das, the miracle of the fourth Guru that brings in this compassion. He used to go out every night at midnight, escape from all his guards and everybody in Amritsar, India. And he would go out and feed the poor and scrub their feet. So humble. Because why not help thy neighbor? Why not serve? Why, and yes, because you came as pure pain, the pain in paid off, and it's just a miracle. Thank you for sharing that story. Because if anyone can go do white tantric yoga and want to change their life, just go do white tantric yoga and find it. And there's a winter solstice in Florida and a summer solstice in above Espanola on Ramdas Puri, where we all sit and do white tantric for 3 days. And it's phenomenal. It's not 10 hours. Sometimes last year was 8 to 9 hours. It was intense. And always it brings the weather, so the conditions, you're intense and everything like that are challenged. We're fully challenged. And that's holistic. That's Ayurveda. That's the purest way that we can get into the mud and become that lotus and bloom, and grow out of that muddy situation. And it's such a balancing practice. It gives you a strong navel so you don't have back pain. You come with back pain, but eventually you pump that navel in breath of fire or pranayama, and we're in this 9-year. 2020 is a 9-year. And in this 9 years, it's the subtle body. So things aren't going to look like they're changing at all, but you are going to wake up different every morning from your dream state, from your awakened state, blending the two together. And I think, it's relevant to say that Kundalini Yoga works. It's very important to hear that because we are in situations now that of division, separation, don't bring your, money, greed, the 1%. What the heck? It's like, share that stuff, support each other, send somebody on retreat if you can't go. Think outside of the box. And how do you expand in that? How do you think outside of the box? Because the box is so tight. And we're so rigidly in that.
So let's talk about your box. How were you able to expand it over the years, from finding this magic of Kundalini Yoga? How did you become this name, this, practice leader who does retreats, classes, holds spaces for so many people, has such a beautiful name, image? I mean, I'm allowed to say brand because I think we are, in the space as a healer. Although a lot of people deny that, but we all have a personal brand that it's our outer shell that people perceive. So how did Karuna come out as a brand and as a leader in the space?
Luckily, thank you. Luckily, Pamela says it in her letter to Caroline in my book. She says something about being lucky. She was, I gave her, she gave me a nickname called Lucky, and now she thinks she's the lucky one, which is so sweet. The letter in the book is just so sweet from Pamela. But Pamela found me in Boulder, Colorado, selling piquette pants, polyester pantsuits to little old ladies at the time, and said, can my boyfriend and I take your picture? There's an agent in Denver who wants to, to meet new faces and send people to Paris. And I was like, yeah.
Pamela, just to tell our listeners who Pamela is.
Yes, Pamela Hansen. She's an incredible photographer. I mean, her latest and greatest is Beyonce's whole campaign. But she's a shifter. She just, she just gives you this courage. And when you get, in front of her camera, you bring out the best in you. Same thing with yoga. When you get in front of your own yogic practice, you bring out the best in you. And I think that was really important to go on with a one-way ticket to Paris and know that I knew nothing about anything. And seriously, and literally lost all my luggage, lost everything. Talk about hanging out in the same outfit for a very long time in Paris, of all places, right? And it's just an exception to the rule about we navigate through. I started, when I was certified, I started bringing teachers to Boulder, Colorado. And I started doing teacher training programs with other teachers because I wasn't qualified at the time to lead my own. And so there's this 3HO and there's this KRI institutions that run the way you do things. And I was the facilitator. But I had always remembered that becoming a teacher is the highest caliber of our being, any kind of teacher. And so I thought, let's get these students that I was teaching to come to become teachers and take their life into their own hands and responsibility of their families as householders, to understand that we can make it through, with as little as we might have at times. And that it's not always pretty what you see in Kundalini Yoga teacher training programs. It's hard work. It's long days starting with sadhana, and it goes like your tantric practice, 10 hours a day. And I was in Rishikesh running some of these teacher training programs, assisting also. And the weather was horrendous. And the wind and the rain in Española, where I did my own, did a teacher training program, was all the elements, all the tattvas on the fingertips, earth, wind, fire, water, ether come into play. So how did I get to where I am today as a happy, content woman, working on divine feminine, projects, working with the founding mothers movements, working to empower women and their voice chakra to open up their truth and authentic self and know that inside of every one of us, there's that brilliance. Rarely do I use genius, but I love that you brought, Light on Kundalini up as a brand. We need to be prosperous. We need to create and live into our own witness of creation. And yes, we have mentors, but most of the time, and this is the hard part, our mentors just moved on. And I was like, oh my God, I'm here on my own. And I would, I had wonderful friends and have wonderful friends that we can sit on the phone. And one friend, taught me how to speak on the phone for about 3 hours, actually, because I was always in a rush. So everything started to slow down. Everything became so much more conscious of my doings. Even juicing in the morning takes 45 minutes. To juice your own juice, to clean your own house. And, and in our 30s and more so in our 30s, 20s, 30s, we're rushing everywhere. We're thinking, this is it. I'm going to become a yogi. When I was a model in New York with Ford, I was a model in New York. I was like, but I realized that I was living right next to the Integral Yoga Center for a reason. There was something about that. I was got to become, vegetarian, vegan, organic, and just allowing that, grief to come through, which is that cough right then and there. I just want to acknowledge that wisdom and that grace of the healer in us, and to really drop into how we walk around New York City, how we walk around Gold Hill with this awareness of how we have to rest and relax and bundle up, as you see me here.
Yes.
Easy, as you called it.
Cozy. You look very
Yeah,
cozy. But
yeah,
I find that the biggest challenge is, and I still visit my beloved New York City every other week, is to have that peace and slowness, right? It's
yeah,
almost the second you get to those
mm,
places, everything you learn in the woods and the mountains where we are
yeah,
goes
yeah.
out of the door, and you get, soaked in this beautiful,
I'm,
vibrant energy that is very fast paced and very
but
competitive
yeah,
and ambitious.
yeah. And I'm really glad you brought that up because I'm still not so good at handling that. If I can be really honest, I'm like, yeah, let's go, And it's so much fun to be in New York City or to be in Ibiza dancing, in the night or but yet, yet there's a way when we used to do that in the 80s that, we just go straight to work, from Studio 54. But now it's like, oh no, still the fabulous idea of remembering that we had that in our youth and we struggled. I remember being 25, in New York City going, what next? And by the time I was 27, I was married. And I didn't know that even that person at 25, when I was lying there on my birthday going, no, asking these questions are so relevant to who you are today and how you manage it. In the toughest situation is to move on from a relationship that isn't working. As women and men suffer and stay in the, violence of not being able to hearing the call, the whisper, the angelic whisper of the soul and not being able to respond to it would be so tragic. And now everyone has to go inside and hear that voice and be honest with it. Be satnam, be truth is my identity. Be truthful to the response of that voice. It's hard to watch violent things on television or in movies. It's disruptive to the psyche. And it, prompts a question of how you are and what you're doing with your life. You start to question your meditation because you got suddenly hooked on an idea that it was someone else's meditation. No, this is you. This is pure you. And when you sit with you, Yuli, you get to feel the blessing of you, which becomes we, which becomes universal, which becomes, oh, I need some skill set. I need some strategy. I need to become the manager or the defender or the leader or the teacher or the artist or the actor right now, here and now. And I can say that there is practices that I have called the 81 facets of the mind that take you through the 9 aspects that lead you down to the 27 projections. Each aspect has 3 projections that go with it. And the science is why Light on Light magazine that I co-founded and working with the UN on International Yoga Day and all these women coming forth to say, this stuff works. And it's not woo-woo. It's science. So there's a stability in the practice. I just taught a 90-year-old woman who's an author of 11 books in Kundalini Yoga. And it's the way I integrated what she already knew into what I lent her an idea around to meditate with. And this is important because as we get older, we start to lose things, not only devastating fires, but loved ones, mothers, fathers, siblings, children. No, God forbid. But, things in this world happen. And we need to protect ourselves. And we need to have a practice that when things are devastatingly impossible to move around, like your frozen shoulder going into that sitting with your soul, with yourself, we need to know we can shift. And we need to know that we have support with each other in community. And that's why I talk about it takes a village, but we get into those rabbit holes, those warrens, and we just really get into them. And then we isolate, right, ourselves. And today we need each other.
Absolutely. So beautifully said. And, this is why building a community is a big part of my mission. And I mean, this podcast is a community. There's a community of listeners.
100%. Exactly. Yep.
And, it's a really beautiful experience. And the more I work with healers, I realize how much that community is needed, because a lot of them work solo. A lot of them, or they feel isolated. In addition to working solo, sometimes they feel isolated from their friends, even their family might not be understanding or trusting. It's not the easiest path to choose. And I feel like a lot of people that chose this path, they kind of had no choice. Their soul chose it for them a long time ago. But there is that earth suffering that comes with that decision, with that path. And I think the stronger we become, right? And both in our spiritual practices, but also in our earth skills. And this is where I see my contribution to this community, right? Because the importance of being strong in the earth skills, this is what gives you that confidence, that proactiveness, like, right, what you said, okay, what do you do with it? Like, if you decide to become a teacher, a healer, or leader, whatever it is, but it's the next action step sometimes is really challenging. And this is where we're trying at Healist, at least, to bridge that gap. And I think you're one of those, people that actually manage to blend the two really well into something that is, yes, it's your path, but it's also something that is providing for you, and something that is, which is, I think, extremely important. And it's part of the self-care, right? But also build this community around you of supporters and students and teachers. And I find that to be very unique. And that's why I love bringing people to this podcast to inspire, like, this is possible, that this path can bring you all of that and more. And it's also never too late to change whatever you were doing or thought you meant to do in your life, because you took a big 360 from being a top model to, being this Kundalini leader. And I always love sharing those stories, because I think a lot of people, in addition to what you said about people being stuck in relationships, they also often stuck in a relationship with a craft or a job that they have a really hard time breaking up with, even though they know that's not their true self and that's not their true path. So I always admire people that have that courage to make a shift and choose this path.
Yeah, thank you for seeing that. Thank you. That gives me courage to go out and teach more, to dive in deeper. It's very interesting as human beings. We are so afraid to dive into something new. It's crazy. And I always get, new people in my Costa Rica retreat, and they range from early, late 20s to late 70s. And how dare you bring me here? You should have warned me. These kind of aspects of conversation that are just so out of my league of understanding to even put that fire out. It's not necessary. That is exactly what you want to hear from a student, is like, oh my God, what have I gotten myself into? Because if you're saying that, then you're in the right place. And that brings such a smile to myself and my inner, love and compassion for the, you work by getting there. 70% of your practice is getting there. Did you know that? 30% is doing it. Do it the best you can do it, but your psyche, your soul knows you're doing it. And therefore is so congratulatory that it's, applauding your every move. It doesn't matter how you do it. It doesn't matter if you keep one arm up because the other arm's broken. It doesn't matter. It's just what matters is that you showed up for yourself and that your children see you. Your community sees you. And, I don't know, you just share this willingness to say, I'm learning. I'm a perpetual student in this practice of life. And that's why I call it lifestyle guide, this book, because this is just a guide. This is just a guide for your authentic self to open up, to learn. And with the manual coming out, it's, you're seeing a woman in her 50s and, doing yoga. You're not seeing like, when we used to do that other stuff, that they called yoga, you're seeing like, do the best you can do and know that, everything is a life nerve stretch. Everything you do is offering you an opportunity to bend, back bend in a way in which it's changing a conversation on how you see things. The linear practice of yoga is not necessary anymore. We're talking about indigenous teachings here. We're talking about, Chante Itangwawagalakawi, woman that speaks from her heart, my Lakota name. We're talking about living with these names and walking these paths. And it doesn't matter if you're sleeping well and if you're getting up well early and there's none of that stuff that they call like grumpy. I was always wondering, where does grumpy come from? That's just the craziest idea that someone would get up unhappy. I just think that when we regulate our patterns and see our wrinkles in the mirror, how we go, I love you. I love you. You deserve those lines in your face. You worked hard for those lines. Never, ever change who you are. Because what you're becoming every breath you take is something spectacular. That sounds like out. I know that's so far-fetched to believe that. But I'm going to say that is true.
So beautifully said, Karuna. Well, we love you. I love your energy.
Aww.
This has been like a healing session. I love those episodes when I get to get healed too, and your energy is just so beautiful.
Good, hon. Good. I'm so grateful.
Yeah, I'm grateful for this connection. And anything else, any parting words of wisdom for our beautiful audience?
Just say here, let me read. So let me just put the mala of the heart to my third eye point, and let me open it. Hold every thought, dear friends, and let's see. Between living and dreaming, there is a third thing. Guess it. That's so funny. Antonio Machado, Spain. Between living and dreaming, there is a third thing. Guess it. So I guess I'll leave you with that.
Oh, wow.
Okay, that's an open, that was not planned, right? That's Mala of the Heart. That's a beautiful poetic book. And I do want to leave you with, may the blessings of this day in this most sacred way serve you. May we walk the path of light knowing that there is a way through every block. Just start. May we give each other gratitude, longitude and latitude and flexibility to create practice, create business, create prosperity, and be one together and holding each other in that space, really supporting each other, loving each other. Whatnot.
Beautiful. Well, thank you
So
for
happy.
blessing
Thank
us
you.
with
Thank
your
you.
very uplifting energy today that we all needed, and me particularly.
Sending so much love to you, Yuli.
Yeah,
Thank you for serving the world with your podcast. I
thank
just
you.
love it. Thank
And,
you for having me.
and hope to have you again soon.
Absolutely. Blessings, dear. Thank you.